Yo, what's up everyone? So most of you probably already know that the current Gladiator circuit node is pretty tricky, but for those who don't know the node, I'll quickly go over it. First up we have this Scrap Wars node, and this basically makes your opponent gain hella armor up buffs. I've had fights where my opponent has gained 26 armor up buffs, which is kind of ridiculous, and as you can imagine, this reduces your damage by a lot. It hinders a lot of champions' damage. A lot of the common BG attackers which you would normally want to use straight up don't work in this meta because they have no way to deal with the armor up buffs. So they do no damage, they'll time out in most fights, or they'll do about 100-second fights. So yeah, this node is no joke. On top of that, we have Rust and Ruin, which gives you a 40% chance to be inflicted with an armor break debuff whenever you strike your opponent, and of course this synergizes with Inequity, so this reduces your damage even more. There's so much damage reduction going on in this meta, it's stupid. Next node is Divine Barrier, and this is only for Mystic champs. When you're using a Mystic champ, every 10 seconds your opponent will become immune to Nullify, Fate Steal and Stagger, but you can pause the timer by inflicting Nullify, Fate Steal or Stagger. So in theory, you can keep the timer paused the entire match and your opponent will never go immune to these. But this does screw over some Mystic champions, but still, Mystic champions are generally the MVP for this meta. And last node is the Extent node. This gives the defenders buffs and debuffs an extra 150% duration, but this only matters for the defenders, and I'll be making a separate list for the best defenders this meta, so we won't jump into that. Let's just jump into the best attackers for this meta now. I've sorted it out into 3 sections. There's the OP attackers, the must-have attackers, and then we're going to go over the good attackers, which are not must-haves, but they're very good, they're very solid for this meta, and then we're going to go over the backup options. So yeah, let's get into it. We'll get the most obvious champ out the way first. We all know Absman is the GOAT for this meta. He's immune to armor break, so he's not going to get screwed over by Inequity, and when he would be inflicted with an armor break, that gives him morphs charges. This ramps him up extremely fast, so he does insane damage almost instantly in the matchup. He's also extremely versatile. The only fight he struggles against is Serpent. He can pretty much take anyone else. So yeah, he's extremely versatile. He's extremely fast. He is just insane this meta, but you all probably already knew that. Next we got Crossbones, who is one of the absolute best attackers for this meta. On top of being able to shrug the armor break so you're not affected with Inequity as much, his ability Accuracy Reduction actually stops your opponent from gaining armor up buffs. So once you have 4 Fury buffs against the hero or 5 Fury buffs against the non-hero, your opponent will never gain any armor up buffs. So any fight is just a normal fight for Crossbones this meta. He is definitely one of the best attackers. Tiger's Neutralize will stop your opponent from gaining any armor up buffs, and it gets around the node where they go Nullify immune, because Neutralize is not Nullify, Fate Steal or Stagger, so she's not affected by that node. She is affected by Inequity, but her damage is so insane, she's still doing most fights in around 30 to 40 seconds. So yeah, of course Tiger is the GOAT this meta, she is most metas. Of course, there's CGR. On top of having a million armor breaks, he has the Nullify when you get the Damnation. So you don't have to worry about the armor ups with CGR, of course. The only thing that does mess with him this meta is the Inequity. That does slow him down a bit, but he's still doing most fights in around 40 seconds, which is still top tier for this meta. Each buff on the opponent gives Chavez extra attack. Not each unique buff, but every single buff. So each and every single armor up buff is going to give Chavez extra attack in this meta, so she hits like a truck. She's also extremely versatile, not as versatile as Abs of course, but there's very few matchups what Chavez can't take because she don't rely on any buffs or debuffs, so Chavez is also one of the top tier attackers for this meta. Gallon is insane for this meta, as you can probably guess, because your opponent is gaining loads of armor up buffs, and whenever your opponent gains an armor up buff, Gallon is going to gain planetary mass. So Gallon ramps up extremely fast this meta. On top of that, his harvest only goes off base attack, so that means it is not affected by Inequity. So Gallon perfectly counters this meta. When Null enters Corruption, he will armor break any armor up buff your opponent already has, and he will stop your opponent from gaining any more armor up buffs as long as you stay in Corruption. So he is definitely one of the best attackers for this meta. He completely counters the armor up side. He is affected by inequity, but he gets extra armor breaks this meta from armor breaking the armor ups, so that makes up for it. You do ideally want your null to be high sig, but you can definitely get away with a low sig or even unduped null this meta, but it just will be a bit slower with an unduped null. But a high sig null, definitely one of the best attackers for this meta. Wiccan is an absolute must-have for this meta, on top of being armor break immune, so he is not affected by inequity. He has neutralized just like Tigra, so your opponent is never going to gain any armor up buffs. On top of that, whenever you would neutralize an armor up buff, or when you're immune to armor break, you're going to apply an extra incinerate to your opponent. So he melts so fast this meta. He's one of the fastest attackers. He's pretty versatile. Yeah, enjoy it while it lasts, because there will never be a meta where Wiccan is this strong again. Venom gains all his damage almost instantly, so you can do a lot of damage before you're even inflicted with a ton of armor breaks, or before your opponent gains a lot of armor up buffs. Plus Venom can nom some of the armor up buffs with his SB1, so Venom has been great this meta. He's also a counter to one of the most tricky defenders, which is Void, who I will get round to in the top defenders video. Ronan absolutely cheeses this meta. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, your opponent can gain up to 27 armor up buffs, and this will give Ronan so much attack that inequity won't matter, and of course this lets you stun lock your opponent. So Ronan is an absolute MVP and an absolute must have for this meta. Pretty much all of Wolf's damage comes from his ruptures, and as you can see here, his ruptures scale with base attack only, so that means they are not affected by inequity. So Wolf pretty much does his full damage because armor ups do not affect his rupture damage either, so Wolf is a perfect counter for this meta. He does gain a lot of power off MD as well, because the armor ups last 10 seconds, so eventually they do fall off and give you MD power. I do recommend turning your MD down to around 3 for this meta, because it's very easy to get pushed to special 3 with Mystic champs from the armor up buffs falling off. This goes for most Mystic champions. This is the only time I'll mention it in the video though, because I don't want to start repeating myself. Starkey still works great this meta. Most champions with guaranteed critical hits or that have a very high crit chance are pretty good this meta, because critical hits bypass a lot of the armor. Not all of it. It bypasses around 70% of the armor. So a lot of champions with guaranteed crits or very high crit rating are good, but they are still losing out on a lot of damage. But Starkey still does insane damage this meta. The way you want to play him is you want to build to 10 poise and parry heavy. Only parry heavy to hit them as least amount as possible, because this will limit the amount of armor ups they gain. This will limit the amount of armor breaks you get on yourself. So yeah, Stark is an MVP this meta, no surprise there. There's really not many metas where Starkey doesn't work. Diablo is great for this meta as long as you pick the Nullify pre-fight. If you do, as soon as you use your SB1, you'll have a constant Nullify, so you never have to worry about your opponent going immune to it, because you will constantly be nullifying, so you'll constantly be pausing that timer, so they will never go immune to Nullify. On top of that, he gains loads of power from nullifying the armor up buffs, which pushes him to SB3 really fast, and we all know that's where the damage is at with Diablo. There is a pre-fight which makes him armor break immune, but I don't think that's worth going for, because it does reduce his poison damage. Just go for the nullify pre-fight and you're good. Adam is OP this meta. He has very easy to access true damage. As you can see here, this allows him to bypass armor and resistances. Inequity does affect him, but his damage is so insane, just like Tigra, that it doesn't really matter. Adam's definitely one of the best attackers for this meta. Of course, there's Archangel. He has the ability accuracy reduction, so he completely shuts off the node once he has 3 neurotoxins, but my god is he boring. I do not condone the use of AA. Yeah, please don't rank your AAs. Use fun champs. AA's he's just boring as hell, man. But he is good for this meta, and it's sad because a lot of people have him in the deck. I guess people just hate fun. Jabari is going to cleanse most of the armor break debuffs, so she is not going to be affected by inequity. On top of that, when she would be inflicted with an armor break debuff, that's going to ramp her up faster, make her go into the hunt faster, so she's a lot faster this meta than she normally would be. The armor ups don't affect her much either because most of her damage comes from bleed. Like I mentioned with Crossbones earlier, ability accuracy reduction counters the node, so of course Black Cat is great, but her ability accuracy reduction is nowhere near as strong as Crossbones. It takes a lot longer for her to get to 100% ability accuracy reduction, so that's why she is in the good attacker section and not the most OP must-haves, but she is definitely great for this meta. If you were thinking you get a lot of free willpower healing from this meta, you would be wrong because the armor breaks stack up so high. You get so many armor breaks on yourself that despair starts to come into play, and that counters willpower, so you don't actually get that much willpower healing in this meta unless you're playing Mr. Sinister, because Mr. Sinister is immune to despair, so you get willpower healing the entire match at full potency, which is really strong. And Mr. Sinister's playstyle is just really strong for this meta. His degens are not affected by the armor ups, of course, and you just want to parry heavy a lot with Sinister and throw SB1s. You don't do many hits with Sinister, so you don't trigger many armor ups on your opponent. You don't get many armor breaks on yourself. So Mr. Sinister's playstyle is just great for this meta. He's very solid on attack for this meta. He's normally too slow for BG's attack, but this meta he can hang very well. The opponent gains a lot of buffs, and when Longshot uses this SB2, he's going to convert all those buffs into Incinerates and do massive damage, so of course he is great for this meta. But I have had issues where my signature ability hasn't kicked in and hasn't nullified any buffs whilst I'm working my way up to my SB2, so this made my opponent go nullify immune, which made me not throw my SB2 of course, and then MD pushed me to L3. So I have had fights go wrong with Longshot, but that was just bad RNG with my signature ability not kicking in. Make sure you throw your SB2 whilst your opponent is not nullify immune. Try to get to your SB2 before they trigger that nullify immunity, and as long as you do that, Longshot is OP. He's going to do insane damage and he's going to finish the fight insanely fast. So the deal with Mantis is she is not great in an average matchup this meta. She can work, but she's not great in your average matchup. She is still great against science champs though, because that tranquilize passive becomes 100% potency, so you're never going to get any armor break debuffs or any other debuffs on yourself, so you're never going to be affected by inequity. And her guaranteed crit SB2 is going to bypass around 70% of the armors, so her SB2 is still enough to kill most science champs, or an SB2 and a combo after will do it. But the reason you will want to run Mantis in your deck is because she is one of the best counters to two of the most tricky defenders this meta, which are Void and Photon. I'll get more into them in the top defenders list, but just know Mantis is worth running just for these two defenders. They are that tricky and Mantis counters them that well, and that is why she is on the list. The biggest Kushala I have is a 3-star, so that's kind of funny, but besides the point. She is great this meta because she has Soul Barb, and this is going to deal damage for each armor up buff on the opponent. On top of that, on her special 1, she has a 50% chance to nullify each armor up buff and turn it into an Incinerate. So Kushala's great this meta. She is affected by inequity though, so that does slow her down a bit. Just like Kushala, Mordor has the Soul Barb on the SB2, so he's going to deal damage for each armor up buff on the opponent, so Mordor cooks very hard this meta. Hey, and you know my guy Nova found a way to cook in this meta. Off Nova's SB1, he gains a True Strike buff, and this True Strike buff will ignore all armor on the opponent, so the armor node means nothing to Nova. Inequity does mess with him a bit, but not too much. Nova is great this meta. He's one of the best Attuma counters. He probably is the best Attuma counter this meta apart from Absman, but I ban Absman, he doesn't exist for me, so Nova is definitely the best Atuma counter for me. And yeah, he's just great this meta. He works like he normally does, he just has a bit of reduced damage because of the inequity. And the same reason Nova is OP this meta is the same reason Odin is OP. He also has True Strike off the SB1. Man, True Strike is such a good piece of utility, such an underrated ability. It comes into play so much, but Odin is a bit worse than Nova this meta because he does get armor broke, and when Odin gets armor broke, he's going to lose his armor up buff, which means he will do slightly less damage on his SB2, but it's not that bad. Odin's still great, still works better than most champs this meta, ignores all that armor. Yeah, he's great. Omega Red's spore damage goes off base attack only, so he is not affected by inequity, and of course all his damage comes off the spores, so the armor ups don't affect him. So Omega Red is a great champ for this meta. He's normally too slow for Battlegrounds attack like Mr. Sinister, but this meta he can definitely hang, especially a rank 3. Sasquatch is armor break immune, so inequity is never going to affect him. He has stagger off his heavy attack as well, so he can handle those armor ups, and you can play it in a way where you're parrying heavy in a lot and gaining a lot of power from MD. Then you can just recycle special 2s for most of the match. So Sassy is great for this meta, but he's so good on defense that you're not going to want to use him on attack that much. You bet Wigra is still OP this meta. She gains a lot of extra power from MD from the armor up buffs falling off, and the nice thing about this is she can't get pushed to SB3 because her SB3 is disabled unless she is charging a heavy attack. She has very high crit chance, so she's going to bypass a lot of that armor. She has bleed off the SB2, which will also bypass a lot of that armor. Her damage is so insane that even with inequity and all the armor ups affecting her, she's still doing crazy damage on her basic attacks, on her special attacks. I've took a rank 3 Sasquatch down in a minute this meta with Wigra, which is crazy for a Sasquatch. Most champs will time out against him in this meta. If you thought a rank 3 Sasquatch was tanky before, imagine him with 20 armor up buffs and you've got 8 debuffs on yourself and inequity is affecting you. Yeah, so Sasquatch is a tank, and Wigra's still taking him down in a minute, which just goes to show how crazy her damage is. She is still great this meta. She is the GOAT. Symbiote Supreme is pretty great for this meta. He's going to stagger / nullify all of those armor up buffs. Inequity does mess with him a bit though, because he already isn't the fastest champ around, so he's definitely not the fastest champ. But he does take some tricky fights like Maestro and Serpent, which is very important. You do definitely want to turn your MD down to about 3 for this guy though, for sure. Doom is armor break immune, so you never have to worry about inequity. He has a very reliable and constant nullify once he triggers his auras of special attacks, so you never have to worry about your opponent gaining too many armors. You never have to worry about your opponent going nullify immune because he has a constant nullify, so he'll keep pausing that timer. So it sounds like Doom should be one of the best attackers for this meta, right? Well, no, because you still have to sit through 1 or 2 Doom SB3 animations, and that takes forever. So he's still far from the fastest champ, but this is the first meta in a while where Doom has been good. You can get a lot of fights down in around 60 to 70 seconds, which is very decent for this meta. Howard the Duck has instant access to 5 armor breaks on his heavy attack, so you never have to worry about your opponent gaining any armor up buffs. The best way I found to play Howard this meta is just parry heavy up to your SB3, and then the SB3 will usually kill them. If not, they'll be stunned and you can kill them with a basic attack combo afterwards. Yeah, Howard is great this meta, and he's definitely one of the best domino counters. Medusa has guaranteed armor breaks off her medium attacks, so you never have to worry about the armor ups with Medusa. She is affected by inequity though, and her damage already isn't the best, so she's not the fastest this meta, but she can get fights down better than most, and she is solid for this meta. This is probably the best meta for her that there'll ever be. Nimrod works great for mutants still. I wouldn't use him against any other class champs, but against mutants, Nimrod can still cook. You want to parry heavy SB2 to minimize the amount of armor breaks you get on yourself, just so inequity doesn't affect you too much. And of course the armor ups don't mean much for Nimrod because most of his damage comes from shock. So Nimrod still pretty good against mutants. Wouldn't use him against any other class champ though. Shuri is still a great domino counter this meta. She takes around 70 seconds. She's pretty slow this meta against other champs, but she works. She can get the fights down. She can still counter a tumor. It's just pretty damn slow this meta. She has guaranteed crits after her SB1, and of course the shock damage bypasses any armor, but I would only put Shuri in the deck if you have a rank 3. I don't think a rank 2 7-star would quite cut it, unless you really need another option for Domino. Herc still works decent this meta because he has a very high crit chance, so he does bypass a lot of that armor. Plus on the SB2, that will deal up to 200% extra burst damage for each armor up buff on the opponent. So once your opponent has 4 armor up buffs, Herc's SB2 is going to be hitting a lot harder. So Herc works pretty decent this meta. He's definitely not the best option though. Spider-Ham's power stings get past all those armor ups of course. Inequity does mess with him a bit. He's definitely slower than he normally is this meta, but his damage is so insane. He can still do 30-second fights. I've seen people do my Mephisto with Ham in 30 seconds. He's still a great attacker. He's just definitely a bit slower than he normally is. Shang can be pretty decent this meta. He can purify all those armor break debuffs, so Inequity won't mess with him too much, and he has all those guaranteed crits, guaranteed crit SB2, so he's going to bypass a lot of that armor. OG4 has that reliable armor break off his parry, and he has pretty good damage, so he is decent for this meta. You want to just parry heavy though, so you don't get too many armor breaks on yourself, so Inequity doesn't screw you over. Hitmonkey is not bad this meta. He has those guaranteed crits, so he's going to bypass a lot of that armor. He has a Disorient, which gives him 45% ability accuracy reduction. It's nowhere near as strong as Crossbones or Black Cat, but it is something. It does help him in this meta. He can still counter champs like Thing. He can still do quite a lot of fights pretty fast. He is definitely decent for this meta. I know this looks like a troll, but it isn't. I promise Venom the Duck is actually pretty good for the Gladiator circuit node. This is the best node there will ever be for Venom the Duck. On his special 2, he applies a toxic armor buff to the opponent. And since your opponent gains like 20 armor up buffs, your basic attacks are going to be doing some pretty nice damage as long as you get that toxic armor up on your opponent. So I'm not trolling. Venom the Duck is actually pretty decent for the Gladiator circuit. He's not my first choice, he's not anyone's first choice, but maybe you can get some use out of your 7-star Venom the Duck finally. If you really want to use him, now is the time, because there'll never be another meta where he's usable like this one. Serpent can be a decent attacker this meta. He's still pretty slow, but he can get the fights down, which is more than most champs can say, and this is thanks to the fact that on his special 2, that deals extra damage based on your opponent's armor rating, and your opponent gains about 1,000,000 armors this meta. So the special 2 hits pretty hard. He's still not the fastest. He still takes around 70 to 90 seconds for a fight, but he can definitely get those fights down. Rintra can be pretty great for this meta. Inequity does affect him, but he actually gains extra attack rating for each armor break on himself, so he actually does more damage than he normally would. On top of that, he has that very strong neutralize like Tigra, like Wiccan, so your opponent is never going to gain any armor up buffs. He is still pretty slow if his SB2 doesn't crit, which it never does, but he can still get the fight down. He is definitely a decent attacker for this meta. Scarlet Witch has a very reliable nullify on her parry. She can constantly nullify, so you never have to worry about your opponent going nullify immune. Inequity does hurt her a lot. Her SB3 degens do a lot less damage thanks to Inequity, otherwise she'd definitely be higher up on a list, but she still cooks this meta. She's still going to kill most champs with an SB3, but she is definitely a lot slower thanks to her Necrity. And I have done fights with Scarlet Witch where I've used my SB3 and it didn't kill my opponent, which just sucked because then you have to ramp up all over again with more SB1s. So Scarlet Witch can be very good this meta, but a Necrity does mess with her quite a bit. Cersei can be okay this meta. The problem with Cersei is she gains a true damage buff off her SB1. This will let her ignore all the armor ups, but you need to go for your SB2 first to gain your Furies, otherwise you won't do any damage. So it takes a while for her to get into a rotation. She's definitely not the fastest champ this meta, but she can get the fights down, which again is more than most champs can say. So she's definitely not a bad backup option to have in this meta. Mojo is going to reduce all the armor up buffs duration by 90%, so you don't really have to worry about the armor ups with Mojo. He's going to gain a lot of extra MD power. You can play him parry heavy in, so you don't get many armor breaks on yourself, so you're not getting gimped by your Necrity. Overall, Mojo is a very decent attacker for this meta. Hood can be a great attacker this meta if everything goes your way, but the problem with Hood is he really does not like a Necrity because he has no damage modifiers in his deck. A Necrity nerfs the hell out of him. If you try and detonate whilst you're inflicted with a ton of armor breaks, you'll barely do any damage, and there's a good chance Hood will time out. In a lot of fights it's happened to me. I've had fights where I've timed out with Hood just because I got unlucky and got loads of armor breaks on myself, but he is really good when things go your way. He has the permanent fate still off the SB2, so your opponent is never going to gain any armor up buffs. It's just the Necrity you need to worry about. He does have 65% ability accuracy reduction off the SB2, which does stop a lot of the armor breaks, but you can still get bad RNG, and it has happened to me. So yeah, that's the problem with Hood. He can be great, he will be great as long as he doesn't get too many armor breaks on himself, because he really does not like a Necrity. But that's going to be the end of the video. If you found this helpful, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you could leave a like. Let me know if you want to see guides for future Gladiator circuit nodes, and I will see you in the next video.